They called me the mother of the groom, but gave me a folding chair behind the soundboard. No one said it directly. There was no confrontation, no insult hurled across the aisle, just a quiet moment of redirection. A young staffer, barely out of college, found me standing alone by the guest book table. She checked her headset, glanced at her clipboard, and smiled like it pained her to do it. "Hi, Juliet, right? If you'll come with me, I'll show you where you'll be seated." I followed her. Through a hallway that veered away from the reception room, past boxes of folded napkins and a stack of unused votive candles. My heels clicked against the hard floor, out of sync with the music that had just started in the main space. She stopped beside a tall curtain near the AV booth, pulled it back, and gestured toward a lone chair. No linen, no charger plate, no place card with my name. Just a folding chair next to a table covered in cables, a mixer, and a stack of extra mic batteries. "This keeps you near the stage but out of the frame. You know, for photo balance," she said. Emily was really careful about aesthetic flow. Aesthetic flow. I nodded, too stunned to speak. Sat down, too polite to protest. My dress creased beneath me, a pale blue satin I had picked carefully. A soft tone, nothing too bold. Hair curled, makeup done in the mirror of a hotel room I had booked for 2 nights just to feel like this mattered, like I mattered. The curtain closed behind me. The speaker above buzzed with static for a second, then leveled out. Through the seam in the curtain, I caught flashes, golden centerpieces, blush linens, tall chairs with chiffon bows. A floral arch at the far end of the room, lit by warm amber uplighting. My eyes followed the aisle. I had paid for that arch, for every chair, every petal, every beam of rented light. Guests took their seats. I saw her family escorted to the front row, her parents flanked by relatives, all perfectly dressed and positioned. Her mother in shimmering rose gold, holding tissues in a silk clutch. Her father adjusting his tie like he was walking into a boardroom instead of his daughter's ceremony. People stopped to hug them, take photos with them. No one looked for me. Then the music changed, strings and piano, the processional. I leaned slightly toward the slit in the curtain. Daniel entered, looking like a magazine groom. Charcoal gray suit, crisp white collar, hair smoothed back just the way I used to do it before school photos. He looked calm, steady. A man. Not the boy I had raised on my own through late shifts, small apartments, and night terrors that lasted until middle school. He stood tall as the bridesmaids walked in, one by one, their heels sinking slightly into the aisle runner. Then Emily appeared. I didn't need to see her face to know the reaction. The crowd gasped. A soft wave of awe and camera shutters. I saw only the side of her dress as she passed. A delicate train, a long veil, sparkles along the edge that caught the light like dew. It was the same dress she cried over in that boutique downtown, the one she said she could never afford, until I wrote the check. She reached Daniel, took his hands, smiled through tears. The speaker above me caught the officiant's first words, "We are gathered here today to celebrate." And I sat there, alone, behind the curtain, in the room, but not part of it. The vows were short, pretty. She promised laughter and loyalty. He promised partnership and peace. He called her his home. I waited for him to glance in my direction, even once. He didn't. They kissed. Applause roared through the speaker above me, almost loud enough to make me flinch. I watched the guests rise, watched the couple walk back down the aisle, her arm looped through his, both beaming. I stayed in my chair. Then came the speeches. Her father first. "Emily, we are so proud of you. Daniel, you've become the son we always hoped for." He raised his glass, toasted the couple's future. Her mother followed. "Emily has always been a light in our lives. Daniel, thank you for loving her like she deserves." The audience clapped. Someone shouted, "Hear, hear!" A guest called out, "To the parents!" Still no mention of me. Then Daniel took the mic. His voice had deepened since college, less boyish, more broadcast ready. "Thank you all for coming. To Emily's parents, thank you for making me feel like family. To my wife, for saying yes, and to everyone who helped make today possible, we're so grateful. That was it. No name, no "thank you, Mom," no "for everything she's done." No gesture toward the woman sitting behind a curtain beside the AV crew who paid for the very speaker that delivered his words. I didn't blink. I didn't shift in my seat. I just listened as the applause swelled again, and the band started tuning up for the first dance. I recognized the song. It was the one Emily said reminded her of Daniel the first time she heard it, years ago, on a road trip. They'd played it in the car, volume full, windows down. I had never heard it before that day. It meant nothing to me. But the silence did. That curtain wasn't an oversight. It was a boundary. And the folding chair? That was intentional. We all agreed I'd be honored. That's what they said. That's what they promised me at the start. You'll be right there, front and center, the mother of the groom. But here I was, behind the curtain, next to a cable box, erased from the frame, and still I sat. Just long enough to hear the band strike the first chord, just long enough to feel the weight of the moment pass without me in it. Then I reached for my phone, and I began the first of 3 messages that would quietly undo everything they were counting on. I brought a place card in my purse, just in case. I wasn't being dramatic. I had simply seen enough weddings to know what "slipped through the cracks" actually means. So I tucked it beside my compact mirror, a small white card with my name written in soft ink, curved and elegant, Juliet Carter, mother of the groom, just in case. But when I arrived at the venue, I didn't take it out, because I believed them. We all agreed, after all. I would be honored, seated up front. Daniel's fiancé even said it, "Of course you'll be near us, you're his mother." I should have known. The seating chart was printed on foam board, mounted in a gold frame, decorated with eucalyptus. Guests stood around it smiling, pointing, snapping pictures. I waited until the crowd moved, then stepped forward, searching the alphabetized names. Carter, nothing. I checked twice, then a third time in case I had somehow been moved under a different table or maybe listed by my maiden name. But no matter how many times I looked, my name wasn't there, not even misspelled. I turned to one of the event staff. "Excuse me," I said softly. "I think I'm missing from the chart." She gave me the kind of smile you use when you're carrying someone else's mistake. "What's the name?" "Juliet Carter. I'm the mother of the groom." Her face didn't change, but I saw her shoulders shift, a breath held, released, then a pause that lasted just a little too long. "One moment," she said. When she returned, she didn't look at me. She just said, "You've been placed near the AV booth. It's separate from the formal tables, but you'll still be close to the room." Separate. That word clung to me the whole walk back. Past the welcome sign, past the linen-draped tables with pale pink centerpieces and hand-painted menu cards. I heard laughter coming from the reception room, real, full-bellied, beautiful, none of it mine. When I reached the curtain, I knew. The chair wasn't temporary, it was mine. One gray folding chair behind the speaker rack, beside a table stacked with sound cables and extra mic batteries. No plate, no name, no water glass, just distance, measured and enforced. I sat down. My dress, a pale blue satin that I had spent far too long choosing, wrinkled across my lap. I tucked my clutch beneath it, felt the edge of the place card I had written myself, and pulled my hand back. I would not save my own seat. From the seam in the curtain, I saw her parents seated at the head table. Her mother smiled like it was her second wedding. Her father leaned back in his chair, laughing at something the DJ said. They had a spotlight. Literal lighting. I could see it shining in the curl of her mother's updo. I didn't have a seat, but I had a speaker. The sound above me buzzed on. The mic opened. Applause, followed by the tap of silverware on glass. Her father stood to speak. "We've always said Emily deserved the best, and she found it." Then her mother, "Daniel, you've already become like a son to us, and we are so honored to be your second family." That word again. Honored. I waited. I kept waiting. Through 2 more toasts, the music swell, the clinking of glasses. Then Daniel stood. The room went still, the way it does when someone beloved speaks. "To Emily's family," he said, "thank you for making me feel like one of your own. And to everyone here tonight, you made this the best day of our lives." He raised his glass. And that was it. No mention of me. No acknowledgement of the person who had signed every check, booked every vendor, negotiated every floral upgrade when Emily wanted something more elevated. Not even a look toward the edge of the room where I sat, folded quietly behind equipment that wasn't even mine. I thought about the time I asked Emily if she wanted to do a joint dance with the parents. She smiled and said gently, "It might feel unbalanced. Since it's mostly my family, it might confuse the flow." I let it go. I always let it go. No dance, no pre-ceremony photos, no mention in the program. I told myself it didn't matter, that Daniel loved me and that would show. But in this room, I didn't exist. I watched them toast. Her parents received a standing ovation. Emily cried. Daniel kissed her hand. The speaker buzzed. The DJ called for first dances. The crowd whooped, and I sat perfectly still. I hadn't cried yet. I wasn't even angry. What I felt was something sharper, something thinner, a cooling inside me, like I had been standing in the center of their lives holding a torch, only to realize they had built walls around it and pretended the light was theirs. I reached into my clutch. My fingers brushed the place card again. But instead of setting it out, I curled it in my palm and closed my hand around it. I was not going to fight for my name anymore. I had already given them everything. Now I was taking something back. The head table looked like something out of a bridal catalog, elevated, radiant, and impossibly perfect. White roses and gardenias poured from the centerpiece like they were overflowing with grace. Candlelight flickered against crystal. The gold-accented plates caught every bit of spotlight as if they were auditioning for a magazine cover. I was not in the photo. From the edge of the ballroom, where the lighting turned from soft ivory to backstage utility gray, I could see everything but belonged to nothing. They had given her parents the place of honor. Dead center. Direct view of the dance floor, the chandeliers, and the camera crew. I was seated so far out I could hear the AC vent before I heard the toasts. The chair wasn't even part of the set. It was one of those collapsible event rentals with a metal back and a vinyl seat that creaked every time I shifted. No name tag, no linen napkin, no glassware. I wasn't forgotten. I had been deliberately left out. They didn't just move me down the list. They removed me from the narrative. When the first course was served, lobster bisque followed by a butter-soft fillet, I didn't even get a water glass. One of the servers gave me a polite nod, then veered sharply toward the real tables. The tables with lighting and laughter and cameras that panned wide enough to capture legacy. My legacy was waiting outside in a car. I had packed a protein bar in my purse that morning in case I skipped breakfast. At the time, I thought it was a motherly gesture, in case Daniel got hungry during portraits. Now it was my dinner. The speaker crackled, the wedding coordinator tapped the mic, and the music slowed to cue the father-daughter dance. Everyone stood. Phones lifted. I remained seated, but I leaned just enough to see. The bride walked forward, lips trembling, her veil pinned to the perfect coil of her chignon. Her father took her hand like she was a gift he was giving away. They danced. And as they did, I realized something no one had said aloud. They were building Daniel a new origin story. In this version, he had no single mom, no tight grocery budgets, no tiny kitchen table covered in job applications, no Christmas Eves spent wrapping gifts from clearance shelves and pretending they were just what I always wanted. They were smoothing him out, polishing him for display, and he was letting them. At the head table, Daniel looked more like their son than mine. His posture had changed, more upright, more formal. He laughed at all the right cues. He held Emily's hand like he had never known what it meant to reach for help. The tux he wore, the watch, even the way he toasted, it all said one thing. He had arrived, but at what cost? I looked down at my lap, where the silk of my dress pooled like water. It was pale steel blue. I had chosen it because Emily's colors were champagne and blush, and I didn't want to clash. I had practiced restraint, taste, deference, and I had been quietly removed anyway. A flicker of movement near the dessert table caught my eye. Emily's younger sister stood with the DJ laughing, then holding a card. She was being handed the mic. Another toast, I thought. One more voice with a name, a title, a front row seat. I used to think titles mattered. Mother of the Groom sounded like it came with authority, recognition, a chair at the front. But now I knew. Titles were just words unless someone chose to honor them, and no one here had. My throat tightened. I reached into my purse and pulled out the card I had written myself, Juliet Carter, Mother of the Groom, a small white rectangle with no power behind it. Just hope. I looked at it for a long time. Then I tore it once, slowly, and dropped the halves into the waste bin beneath the lighting stand. The staff member near the door saw me. She didn't say anything. She just offered me a bottle of water and nodded toward the side exit. Her kindness landed sharper than any insult. I stood. Not with drama, not to make a point. I stood because I was done asking for space in a room that had no intention of offering it. I walked the long side of the ballroom, past waiters balancing cake slices, past a flower girl spinning in circles by the ice sculpture. No one stopped me. No one looked twice. As I pushed open the side door, the music behind me shifted again. Upbeat now, something choreographed. The DJ's voice echoed, "Let's hear it for the new Mr. and Mrs." The door closed with a click. Outside, the air hit my skin like a sigh. It was cooler than I expected. Quieter, too. I let my heels sink into the gravel for a second before stepping fully onto the path. I looked back only once, not toward the ballroom, but toward the valet circle, where guests would one day line up and chatter about what a lovely evening it had been. They would never mention me, and I was done trying to be memorable to people who had already chosen to forget me. I pulled my coat tighter around my shoulders, turned, and walked toward the car I had parked at the edge of the lot. Not a word, not a scene, but something in me had shifted for good. They let her sister make a toast. Of course they did. She stood up in a dress that shimmered under the string lights, holding a gold-rimmed flute like it was a microphone at a talent show. The DJ dimmed the music. The guests hushed. Phones rose. And there she was, Emily's younger sister who had barely graduated high school and once called Daniel Dylan for a full year, about to deliver a speech about love. I wasn't in the ballroom to hear all of it, but I heard just enough. The sound system carried her voice beyond the curtain into the hallway where I had paused. I was standing near the kitchen entrance, sipping the water the staff member gave me, pretending I was just waiting for something. But I wasn't. I was listening. Emily is the kind of person who makes everyone feel seen. And Daniel, you've become one of us. The words landed like a drumbeat. One of us. Not one of her. Not one of the family who raised him. Not one of the people who knew him before the corner office and the polished life. They had recast him, and now they were sealing it with applause. I don't remember deciding to go back in. I just moved, not to make a scene, but to be present, to bear witness to the last thread snapping. The ballroom had shifted since I left. The lights had softened. The wine had opened people's expressions. The head table looked looser, louder. Daniel had his arm around Emily's chair, and they were laughing about something the sister said. I couldn't tell what. I found my original seat. It was still there, untouched. I sat down quietly. No one noticed, or so I thought. Until the wedding coordinator approached. She had that tight smile professionals use when delivering bad news. "Hi, Juliet," she said gently, crouching to my level. "I was told you'd like to say a few words, but unfortunately, we're out of time for formal toasts." I blinked. "I never asked to speak," I replied calmly. "Oh, then I must have misunderstood," she said, flustered. "The bride's family mentioned, well, just to be safe, let's keep things moving." And with that, she walked away. That was when I understood. They hadn't just erased me from the seating chart, they had erased me from the script. It wasn't that there wasn't time. They had made time for Emily's sister, for her parents, even for a college roommate who toasted with a poem that rhymed toast with ghost. But not for me. They had assumed I might ask, preemptively silenced the possibility. My words were too real, too unrehearsed, too unsponsored by their narrative. I wasn't Emily's sister with practiced anecdotes about sleepovers and shared closets. I was the woman who had sat with Daniel through panic attacks, job rejections, heartbreak. I had seen him broken, and then I had seen him rebuild. But my version of him didn't fit their champagne storyline, and I think Daniel knew, because at that moment, across the room, he met my gaze. For one heartbeat, he looked at me the way he used to, before college, before Emily, before all of this. Like he saw me, like he knew what they'd done, but he didn't stand. He didn't cross the room. He didn't say a word. He looked away first. It was the final silence I needed. I stood up, not out of anger, but because I had nothing more to witness. The moment for me had passed. There would be no microphone, no speech, no redemption arc where the room suddenly remembered who I was. And I didn't want one. I walked slowly past the dessert table again, past the hired photo booth with props I had helped pay for, past a table of her cousins who looked at me like I was the woman who brought store-bought cupcakes to a wedding of fondant cakes. When I reached the foyer, a young woman from the venue staff caught my arm. She looked uncertain. "Ma'am, are you the groom's mother?" I nodded, cautious. She looked around, then handed me a slim envelope. "This was left at the front desk for you," she said. My fingers closed around it instinctively. Cream envelope, my name handwritten in blue ink. But it wasn't Daniel's handwriting. They called it a gift. That was the word Emily used in the wedding planning group chat right after I wired the deposit for the venue. "Thank you again for the gift," she wrote, with a blushing emoji and a heart. "We're so grateful." A gift. As if I had handed them a scented candle or a thoughtful card. Not the $22,400 I had transferred in 2 installments, one in August for the Vineyard deposit, and another in December when the caterer threatened to cancel unless the final headcount was paid. It had started small. "We're a little tight this month," Daniel had said once, glancing at Emily. "Just until the next quarterly bonus." I remembered nodding, offering to help. Because that is what mothers do. But like most things that begin with kindness, it turned into expectation. It was Emily's idea to get married at the Vineyard. "It's where my cousin got married," she said, "and it's sentimental for our family." "Not ours." "Seren, still," I said yes. I said yes to the dress fittings, the flower upgrades, the tent rental when rain threatened the ceremony. I said yes when they asked to use my Marriott points for the bridal suite. I said yes when they suggested I fly out early to help with logistics, even though I had just wrapped up a 14-day project sprint at work and hadn't slept more than 5 hours in days. But saying yes did not grant me a seat. It did not earn me a toast. It did not protect me from being pushed to the edge of the reception and handed an envelope that might as well have read, "Do not speak." What they saw as generosity, I now saw as leverage. And they had used every cent of it to build a day where I didn't exist. The irony? I had the receipts. Literal ones. The florist invoice had my name on it. So did the catering contract. When Emily's mother insisted on adding a live quartet for the cocktail hour, the coordinator had called me for final approval because my credit card was on file. I remember the day clearly. It was a Tuesday. I had been sitting in a parking lot outside my office, headset still in from a client debrief, when the planner asked, "Juliet, do you want to authorize the string ensemble for $1,400? I had said yes. Automatically. Not because I wanted violins, but because I wanted Daniel to have a beautiful day, even if it meant I would spend most of it alone. Now, as I sat in my car, engine off, envelope still in my lap, I felt none of that instinct left in me. I didn't feel generous. I felt used and, strangely, awake. There was one invoice left unpaid, the transportation service for the getaway car and guest shuttles. It was due that morning, but they had assured me I could settle it by midnight. $3,200. The final piece. I opened my phone, pulled up the contract, scrolled to the clause that said, If payment is not received by 11:59 p.m., services will be canceled and vehicles will be released to other reservations. It was 9:37 p.m. I stared at the number. At first I thought about paying it, one last yes. Then I looked out at the Vineyard. The ballroom glowed with celebration. Emily and Daniel were probably twirling to a slow song, captured on a dozen rented iPhones and DSLRs, framed by a backdrop I had also paid for. They had built the perfect picture, without me. And now, they would get to explain how the guests were stranded, how the sparkler send-off never happened, how the vintage convertible they had selected, white leather seats, navy ribbon, never pulled up. I didn't need to raise my voice. I didn't need a microphone. I just needed to let time pass. 9:52 p.m. I placed the phone face down, leaned back, and let the silence grow. Inside, the music swelled. I could hear it faintly through the Vineyard's sloped acoustics, muffled laughter, clinking glasses. They were probably lining up for the final dance by now. Daniel used to ask me to dance with him when he was small. He would step on my feet in his socks and throw his arms around my waist. He had been 5 when he said, "When I grow up, I want to marry you." And I had laughed, said, "No, baby, I'm your mommy." Now he was a man, and I was his history, neatly folded, packed away, not part of the story he wanted told. 10:11 p.m. Still no call, still no one asking, "Mom, are you okay?" At 10:47, I started the engine. The shuttle drivers were already off the property. I hadn't canceled, I just hadn't paid, and they hadn't checked. I drove slowly, past the back entrance, saw the caterers beginning to clean. Guests were outside, confused. I saw someone raise their phone, a text, a call, but not to me. They didn't know I had been the one to book the fleet, that I had carried the cost, that they were riding on my silence all night. And now the silence had spoken. They called it a logistical error. That was the phrase whispered across the Vineyard gravel paths, as guests began to murmur and shift uncomfortably in their formal shoes. No shuttle, no getaway car, no sparkler farewell, just confusion. The wedding coordinator rushed out first, holding her clipboard like a shield. "Please bear with us," she said in her tight, trained voice. "There's been a miscommunication with transportation." A few people accepted it. Most did not. Emily's uncle looked annoyed. A bridesmaid in stilettos started crying. One of Daniel's co-workers muttered, "You'd think a $60,000 wedding would get the basics right." I sat in my car, windows rolled down, engine off, watching, listening. The bride and groom hadn't emerged yet. They were still inside the reception hall, oblivious to the growing restlessness outside. I thought about leaving, driving away, letting them handle the wreckage I never warned them about. But something in me resisted. Not out of spite, out of precision, because if they were going to rewrite me out of the story, then I would leave behind something they couldn't control. It began with Mr. Rowland, Emily's father, the man with the deep tan, monogrammed cuffs, and that ever-present sense that he saw the world in terms of leverage. He was standing by the main entrance, talking to someone on Bluetooth, growing more agitated with each second. "Find out where the hell the cars are," he snapped. "This is not acceptable. I gave them the timeline 2 weeks ago." I stepped out of the car, quietly. I did not call his name. I simply walked toward him, slow enough that he would see me before I arrived. He did. He lowered the phone but didn't hang up. "Something to add?" he said, clearly mistaking me for a vendor. I met his gaze. "I'm Juliet, Daniel's mother." His eyes flickered, recognition, then calculation. "Oh, no apology, just that word." "I wanted to let you know," I said, voice even. "There's no error." He tilted his head. "The shuttles weren't delayed. They were never paid for. The balance was due at midnight. I chose not to settle it." There was a pause, a long one. The phone in his hand went silent. Then, "You're joking." I didn't answer, because it wasn't a joke. Because I had paid for the venue, the food, the linens, the lights, and even the small violins currently packing up near the arbor. And they had given me a folding chair behind the soundboard. He exhaled sharply. This isn't how civilized people handle things." "No," I said. "Civilized people don't hide the woman who funded their daughter's wedding, or cut off her microphone, or send her a note asking her not to complicate the night." His expression tightened. "That wasn't personal. It was about optics. Emily didn't want—" "I know what Emily didn't want." The moment he said her name, I understood. He wasn't surprised this had happened. He was just upset that someone like me had broken their version of perfect. In their world, the people who pay keep quiet, the ones who stay silent get thanked, but I was no longer interested in silence. "I'm not here to create a scene," I said. "I just thought you should be informed, so the next time you call the shuttle company, you'll know where the failure started." He didn't respond, but his Bluetooth chirped again, and this time, he picked up. "Cancel the follow-up call," he said into the receiver. We'll handle it." I turned to leave. That should have been it, but he stopped me. "Wait." I turned back. He cleared his throat. "What do you want from this?" I smiled, but not kindly. "Nothing." He didn't believe me. That was clear. People like him don't understand doing something without a transaction, but I had already received what I came for. Not revenge, not control, just truth, finally placed where it belonged. Inside, I heard the reception music slow. Someone must have told the DJ the send-off was delayed. Guests were still outside. They weren't angry yet, but they were curious. And curiosity spreads like fire through a wedding crowd. Soon people would start asking questions, and no matter what spin Emily or her parents tried to offer, someone would remember I was there, that I was sitting silently, that I wasn't rushing, apologizing, or confused, that I had been calm, that I had been watching. I got back into my car and drove slowly, taking the back road out toward the ridge. As I reached the top of the Vineyard hill, I paused. The entire reception space was visible below. The string lights, the tables, the empty gravel loop where the classic convertible never pulled in. It was all still beautiful, but now it was unfinished, and people would wonder why. The morning after the wedding, I didn't wake up early. I didn't have to. For the first time in weeks, there was no invoice to review, no dress alteration appointment to confirm, no email from the florist asking if the rose varietals could be swapped for something more elevated. The silence felt earned, but silence has a way of breaking without sound, because around 9:14 a.m., my phone buzzed with a notification. Emily Trent had posted. The first photo in the carousel was predictable, the two of them under the arbor, faces glowing, the caption written like a Hallmark card. "The day we dreamed of, every moment a fairy tale. Thank you to everyone who made it magical." Then came the second line. "Grateful to all who stayed through the storm, even though the weather tried us." Storm? There had been no rain, just the absence of transportation. Just the sparkler send-off that never happened, just a quiet evacuation in formal shoes on uneven gravel, and now it was being rewritten. She wasn't just shaping the narrative, she was painting over it entirely. I kept reading. Buried beneath the captions, deep in the comments, I found one that stopped me. "Wait, what happened with the cars?" Emily had replied. "It was a mix-up with the venue. We're just glad everyone was so gracious. Luckily, our parents handled it behind the scenes." I stared at that sentence. Our parents. Not my mother-in-law. Not Juliet. Just our parents. A polite, glossy placeholder. It made it sound like Roland and Susan had rushed in with logistical heroism. In reality, I had watched Roland turn red in the parking lot. I had been the one to quietly tell him there was no error, that the shuttles had never been paid for, because I had chosen not to. I didn't comment, didn't correct, didn't DM, because sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is not chase a lie down the hallway. Let them tell their version. I had already told mine, not with words, with absence. And absence has a weight they weren't expecting. By noon, more photos appeared. Emily posing with her bridesmaids, Daniel laughing with her dad. One picture showed their wedding hashtag in gold calligraphy on a cocktail napkin, "Trentfully yours." That hashtag had been my idea. I remembered scribbling it down on a grocery receipt when I thought it might bring us closer. Now, It was part of a brand I didn't belong to. I opened my laptop and pulled up a folder titled Wedding Final Docs. Inside were PDFs, catering invoices, bar contract, transportation agreement. Every document had my name, my email, my signature. I selected them all, moved them to a new folder, archived, not forgotten. Then I backed them up to a private cloud, not for revenge, for memory, for when the truth needed to exist, even if unspoken. Later that afternoon, a neighbor stopped me as I watered the garden. "I saw the photos," she said, smiling. "You must be so proud." I returned the smile. It didn't reach my eyes. Pride is quieter than I expected. She tilted her head, confused, then nodded slowly. "You looked beautiful," she said gently. "Even if we only saw one photo." One photo, I knew the one she meant. A group shot, far from the center. You could see the shimmer of my dress behind the DJ booth, my face barely visible, but still there, present, uninvited, but undeniable. That night I poured a glass of wine, sat on the porch, watched the sunset burn gold behind the trees. No messages from Daniel, no thank you call, no update. But I didn't need one. They had told their version, and I had told mine, without a microphone, without a scene. I had simply let the facts stand, and the silence deepen. Because the people who were watching closely, they saw it all. The next morning, the bride posted a carousel of photos on Instagram. The caption read, "Grateful for everyone who stayed with us until the end of the night. Magical, love-filled, perfect." I stared at the screen, at the filtered light from the vineyard, the flawless shots, Emily wiping a fake tear during her dad's toast, Daniel dipping her during their first dance, her mother clapping as they ran through a tunnel of sparklers that never actually lit. And then, the line that made my hands go still. "My husband and I were so sad that Daniel's mom had to leave early, but we know she was with us in spirit." I had not left early. I had stayed long enough to hear the last string note played, long enough to witness the guests looking for shuttles that never came, long enough to hear Roland explain that there had been a scheduling miscommunication while glancing sideways at me. Emily knew I had stayed. She had seen me by the ballroom doors. We locked eyes for a moment while she posed for a photo with the cake. She saw me standing there, arms folded, not smiling, and I saw her look away. Not out of shame, but calculation. She was already rewriting the ending. That post wasn't about gratitude, it was damage control, and like everything else about the night, it told a story she wanted people to believe, that I had quietly slipped away, that I was too tired or too overwhelmed, that she had no part in my absence, and in doing so, she could still seem kind, still seem generous, still seem like the daughter who would never sideline the woman who paid for her big day. It was a polished lie, wrapped in a pink bow, and people were liking it. I did not comment. I did not call. I did not text Daniel to ask what he thought, because I already knew. He had seen the post too. He had approved it. Or maybe, like so many things lately, he had simply gone along with it. That was the part I had not prepared for. Not the bride's betrayal. She had always been self-interested, always eager to present perfection. But Daniel's silence. That was something else. It was not loud, it was not cruel, it was hollow. The kind of silence that happens when someone decides you are no longer central to their story, when they stop defending you, because defending you might interrupt the peace they have created, even if that peace was built on your erasure. A few hours later, someone tagged me in the comments. It was Daniel's godmother, Martha. She was not subtle. "Funny, I thought I saw Juliet standing right there by the dance floor at 10:30. Maybe I was wrong." I stared at the comment. Then slowly, it vanished, deleted. A moment later I saw it again, reposted in a less sarcastic tone. "I must be misremembering. Beautiful night." I knew what had happened. Emily had messaged her, or Daniel had. Someone had rewritten the narrative. Again. And Martha, sweet and tired, had let herself be edited. I thought of replying, clarifying, posting a screenshot of the transportation invoice, uploading the florist receipts with my signature. But I didn't. Because stories like this don't need to be fought publicly. The people who matter already knew. Later that afternoon, I opened a drawer in my home office. Inside was the wedding folder, paper-clipped contracts, email printouts, a handwritten checklist with initials. Each item had been ticked off, paid. I reached the bottom of the folder and found the last document, the Vineyard property insurance form. My name, my mailing address, the emergency contact for night of. Mine. I held it for a long time. Then I folded it once and placed it in a new envelope, the kind used for legal documents. I didn't label it, just sealed it and slid it into the back of my bookshelf. One day, when someone asks what really happened at that wedding, I will not need to explain. I will hand them the facts, and they will see whose name was on every line. That night I got a message from someone unexpected. Rachel, one of Daniel's friends from college. We had spoken once years ago at a graduation picnic. She had hugged me and said, "Daniel's so lucky to have you." Now she wrote, "Hey, I know it's not my place, but I just wanted to say I saw everything, and I'm sorry. You deserved more than what they gave you. Everyone noticed." I blinked, read it twice, then a third time, because in a world where the loudest voices often shape the story, sometimes it only takes one witness to tell the truth. And Rachel had been watching. A year passed. 12 months since I sat behind the soundboard at my only son's wedding. 12 months since the sparklers fizzled before they lit. 12 months since the bride smiled for the camera and wrote me out of the story. I had not spoken to Emily since. Daniel had called twice. The first time was awkward. The second was shorter. There were no holidays spent together that year. No birthdays, no updates, no Mother's Day card. Just space. And I learned to live inside that space without folding. Then, in late spring, an envelope arrived. Ivory paper, my name, handwritten in gold ink, their return address, now updated, Mr. and Mrs. Trent, with no mention of me. Inside was an invitation. They were hosting a 1-year wedding anniversary brunch. Same vineyard, same string quartet, same family list. But the difference was in the fine print. At the bottom of the RSVP card, next to kindly reply by May 12th, was one line, hosted with love by the Trents and the Rowlands. That was the first clue. I was not listed as host. I had not been consulted. And yet, the event was being built on the memory of a day I had paid for. I placed the invitation on my counter and left it there for 3 days. I did not call Daniel. I did not email Emily. Instead, I waited for the clarity to come. And when it didn't come with anger. It came with certainty. This time I would go, but not to play the role they had scripted, not to smile and accept the story they had written for me. I would go as myself, fully, and I would bring one quiet truth they couldn't ignore. The morning of the anniversary, I arrived alone. Black linen dress, simple heels, a pearl bracelet I hadn't worn since Daniel graduated high school. I pulled into the same gravel lot where I had sat 1 year earlier, watching guests scatter under string lights with no shuttle to take them home. This time, I walked through the front entrance. No back paths, no curtain, no hesitation. Inside, the room was arranged for brunch. Long tables, delicate calligraphy place cards, a mimosa bar at the back. Guests milled about, smiling politely, clinking glasses. I stood still for a moment, letting the light hit my face, letting them see me. This time, no one guided me to a corner. No one offered me a folding chair. I walked myself to the reserved table and saw my name card placed beside the restroom entrance. Again. I picked it up, held it between my fingers, and calmly set it in my purse. Then I walked to the main table, where there was an empty chair, right next to Daniel. He turned, surprised. "Mom?" he said. "You made it." I did. His smile faltered for half a second when he noticed the place card still in my hand, but he didn't stop me when I sat down. And I didn't wait for permission. Emily arrived 10 minutes later, dressed in blush pink, holding a glass of champagne even though it was barely 11 a.m. She saw me. She smiled, that tight, camera-ready smile that never quite reached her eyes. "Glad you could join," she said. "We weren't sure." I returned the smile, genuine but unreadable. I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. She blinked. Something about the way I said it landed differently than she expected. Daniel looked between us but said nothing. A violinist began playing near the terrace. Someone tapped a glass for a toast. Then it began, the retelling. How perfect the day had been. How loved they felt. How grateful they were to everyone who supported us. And again, my name was not mentioned. I waited. Near the end of the meal, a server passed by offering printed memory booklets, a small bound program of photos, quotes, and thank you messages. I flipped mine open. The cover said, "1 year in, a celebration of love and family." Inside were full-page photos of the wedding, smiles, dances, cake, speeches. One photo showed Emily hugging her parents. Another showed Daniel holding a sparkler that had never been lit. And on page 5, a quote, "Family is who shows up." I closed the booklet and set it down gently. Then I reached into my purse and pulled out a thin envelope. Inside it was one page, a spreadsheet. Juliet Trent, payment summary, venue deposit, $12,000, catering final invoice, $6,400, florals, $2,200, transportation contract, unpaid, $3,200, string quartet, add-on, $1,400, total, $25,200. I slid it across the table, just far enough for Daniel to see. He glanced at it, then up at me. "I never asked you to do this," he whispered, "but you never told them I did." His eyes dropped. The moment was quiet, but heavier than any toast that had been raised all morning. I stood up, smoothed my dress, and said without malice, "Happy anniversary." Then I walked away. A year passed. 12 months since I sat behind the soundboard at my only son's wedding. 12 months since the sparklers fizzled before they lit. 12 months since the bride smiled for the camera and wrote me out of the story. I had not spoken to Emily since. Daniel had called twice. The first time was awkward. The second was shorter. There were no holidays spent together that year. No birthdays. No updates. No Mother's Day card. Just space. And I learned to live inside that space without folding. Then, in late spring, an envelope arrived. Ivory paper, my name, handwritten in gold ink, their return address, now updated, Mr. and Mrs. Trent, with no mention of me. Inside was an invitation. They were hosting a 1-year wedding anniversary brunch. Same vineyard, same string quartet, same family list. But the difference was in the fine print. At the bottom of the RSVP card, next to kindly reply by May 12th, was one line, "Hosted with love by the Trents and the Rowlands." That was the first clue. I was not listed as host. I had not been consulted. And yet, the event was being built on the memory of a day I had paid for. I placed the invitation on my counter and left it there for 3 days. I did not call Daniel. I did not email Emily. Instead, I waited for the clarity to come. And when it didn't come with anger. It came with certainty. This time I would go, but not to play the role they had scripted, not to smile and accept the story they had written for me. I would go as myself, fully, and I would bring one quiet truth they couldn't ignore. The morning of the anniversary, I arrived alone. Black linen dress, simple heels, a pearl bracelet I hadn't worn since Daniel graduated high school. I pulled into the same gravel lot where I had sat 1 year earlier, watching guests scatter under string lights with no shuttle to take them home. This time, I walked through the front entrance. No back paths, no curtain, no hesitation. Inside, the room was arranged for brunch. Long tables, delicate calligraphy place cards, a mimosa bar at the back. Guests milled about, smiling politely, clinking glasses. I stood still for a moment, letting the light hit my face, letting them see me. This time, no one guided me to a corner. No one offered me a folding chair. I walked myself to the reserved table and saw my name card placed beside the restroom entrance. Again. I picked it up, held it between my fingers, and calmly set it in my purse. Then I walked to the main table, where there was an empty chair, right next to Daniel. He turned, surprised. "Mom?" he said. "You made it." I did. His smile faltered for half a second when he noticed the place card still in my hand, but he didn't stop me when I sat down. And I didn't wait for permission. Emily arrived 10 minutes later, dressed in blush pink, holding a glass of champagne even though it was barely 11 a.m. She saw me. She smiled, that tight, camera-ready smile that never quite reached her eyes. "Glad you could join," she said. "We weren't sure." I returned the smile, genuine but unreadable. "I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be." She blinked. Something about the way I said it landed differently than she expected. Daniel looked between us but said nothing. A violinist began playing near the terrace. Someone tapped a glass for a toast. Then it began, the retelling. How perfect the day had been. How loved they felt. How grateful they were to everyone who supported us. And again, my name was not mentioned. I waited. Near the end of the meal, a server passed by offering printed memory booklets, a small bound program of photos, quotes, and thank you messages. I flipped mine open. The cover said, "1 year in, a celebration of love and family." Inside were full-page photos of the wedding, smiles, dances, cake, speeches. One photo showed Emily hugging her parents. Another showed Daniel holding a sparkler that had never been lit. And on page 5, a quote, "Family is who shows up." I closed the booklet and set it down gently. Then I reached into my purse and pulled out a thin envelope. Inside it was one page, a spreadsheet. Juliet Trent, payment summary, venue deposit, $12,000, catering final invoice, $6,400, florals, $2,200, transportation contract, unpaid, $3,200, string quartet, add-on, $1,400, total, $25,200. I slid it across the table, just far enough for Daniel to see. He glanced at it, then up at me. "I never asked you to do this," he whispered, "but you never told them I did." His eyes dropped. The moment was quiet, but heavier than any toast that had been raised all morning. I stood up, smoothed my dress, and said without malice, "Happy anniversary." Then I walked away.